When my mother told the jury I was stealing from my dead father, she did it without hesitation, without even looking back at me, as if I had already stopped being her daughter years ago and had only just been formally declared guilty. Her voice carried through the courtroom like it belonged there more than I did. "She has always been manipulative," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that never actually touched tears. "Even before my husband passed, she was taking things, money, documents, anything she could get her hands on." I remember sitting there, perfectly still, feeling the wood of the witness chair press into my spine like it was trying to remind me I was real. The jury was watching her, not me. Course they were. She was crying in all the right places, pausing at all the right memories, building a version of me that made sense to strangers. Thief. A daughter who stole from a dead man. And I just sat there because if I spoke too soon I might ruin what was coming. My name is Clara Vance. I'm 33 years old. And 6 months ago, I walked into that courthouse expecting to finalize my father's estate. I didn't expect to be put on trial inside it. It started 3 weeks after my father died. A sudden heart attack. No warning. No time to say things properly. Just gone one morning in the study with a cup of coffee still warm beside him. He left behind a house, a business, and a will that my mother insisted I was not prepared to understand. "You're too emotional," she told me the day after the funeral. "Your father always said you take things personally." But I was the one who had been managing his medical records for 2 years. I was the one who had been quietly organizing the financial side of his consultancy firm while my mother called it helping out. Still, I stepped back when she asked me to. Because grief makes you obedient in ways you don't recognize until later. First, it was small things. A missing folder. A bank statement that didn't match what I remembered. Emails from accountants I had never met. Then came the will reading. That's when everything changed. My mother arrived dressed in black silk, sitting perfectly upright like she was attending a gala instead of hearing how her husband's estate would be divided. She held my hand once when we entered the room. Cold. Brief. Performative. And when the lawyer began reading, she leaned forward slightly, as if the words already belonged to her. But they didn't. My father had left the majority of his estate to me. Not equally shared. Not divided. Not negotiated. Me. And that was the moment her face changed for the first time. Not grief. Calculation. The kind of calculation people do when they realize a plan has gone wrong and they need a new one immediately. Within a week, she filed a challenge. Within a month, I was accused of financial fraud. And within 3 months, I was sitting in that courtroom watching her destroy my name. She forged signatures, she continued, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. She accessed accounts she had no right to. She took advantage of her father's illness while he was still alive. My father's illness. The irony almost made me laugh. He had been perfectly lucid until the end. Sharp, careful, private. And he trusted me with everything my mother now claimed I had stolen. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the jury. Some of them already looked convinced. That's the thing about accusations like this. They don't need proof at first. They just need repetition. My lawyer leaned toward me and whispered, "Stay calm." Already was. Because I had been waiting for something. For weeks. For months, actually, if I was honest with myself. Waiting for the part where the truth would finally matter more than the story she was telling. But I didn't know yet how it was going to come. My mother finished her testimony with a soft breakdown she had clearly practiced in the mirror. And then she said the line that sealed her performance. "I just want justice for my husband." The room shifted. Even the jury members who had looked uncertain now leaned forward. Justice is a powerful word in a room like that. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the judge sitting above us was not just any judge. And I only realized it when he finally looked at me properly. The judge's name was Edward Callahan. He had said almost nothing during the first 2 days of the trial. He listened more than he spoke, watched more than he reacted. But on the 3rd day something changed. My mother's lawyer presented what he called irrefutable financial discrepancies. bank transfers, account movements, signature comparisons. And with every document, my mother nodded slightly, like she was confirming a story she had already told too many times. Then the lawyer said something that made the entire courtroom go still. We also have testimony from a family member confirming the defendant's pattern of financial manipulation. And my mother turned toward the witness stand. My uncle. The one person I thought might tell the truth. But he didn't look at me when he spoke. He looked at her. She always had access, he said flatly. Clara always had access to everything. She was obsessed with control. That word again. Obsessed. It's funny how easily character becomes evidence when people agree to believe it. I felt something shift inside me then. Not fear. Clarity. Because I realized I wasn't losing this case. It had already been decided long before I walked in. Except for one thing. The judge was watching me now. Not like a judge watches a defendant. Like someone recognizing a name they hadn't heard in a long time. And then, for just a second, his expression changed. It wasn't sympathy. It was recognition. I had seen that look before. Years ago. At my father's funeral. From a man who stood at the back of the church and never introduced himself. I didn't understand it then. Did now. But I still didn't understand everything. Not yet. That night I went through every document again. Every bank statement. Every signature. Every transfer my mother claimed I made. And that's when I saw it. Pattern. Not mine. Not my father's. Hers. Small inconsistencies. Dates that didn't align. Transfers that originated from accounts she had sworn she never accessed. And beneath it all, a single authorization signature that appeared only after my father's death. A signature that matched a power of attorney document I had never seen before. I felt my stomach tighten. Because that document didn't exist when my father was alive. Which meant it had been created after he died. Which meant someone had altered the legal structure of his entire estate while I was being told I was the one committing fraud. The next morning I brought it to court. My lawyer stood immediately. Your Honor, we would like to submit new evidence of posthumous financial authorization irregularities. My mother didn't even flinch. But I noticed something. Her hands tightened slightly around her purse. Just for a moment. Then the judge spoke. Proceed. And for the first time his voice felt different. He was no longer just listening. He was remembering. The forensic analyst testified next. He explained everything slowly, carefully. Too carefully. Because what he was saying was simple. The signature on the disputed documents was not mine. But it also did not belong to my father. It had been constructed, layered, forged using multiple reference samples. And the source material. My mother's prior legal filings. The room shifted again. Now they were looking at her differently. Not convinced. Not yet. But uncertain. And uncertainty is the first crack in a story that was too neatly built. Then came the moment everything broke open. The judge requested a recess. And when the court reconvened, something unexpected happened. He removed his glasses. And he said my name. Clara Vance, he said slowly. Do you recognize the name Edward Callahan from Boston 20 years ago? The room went silent. I did. But I didn't understand why he was asking. Until he continued. I was assigned as legal oversight on your father's early corporate structuring. And I was present during the original drafting of his estate trust. My breath caught. Because I had never known that. No one had. Except my father. And suddenly I understood what I had been missing. This wasn't just a trial. It was a correction. My mother shifted in her seat. For the first time she looked unsure. The judge continued. The trust was designed with a single protective clause. In the event of posthumous financial manipulation by a primary beneficiary, the estate transfers full control to an independent legal authority. He paused, then looked directly at her. And that authority was me. The room didn't react immediately. It took a second for the words to settle. Then another. Then everything changed at once. My mother stood abruptly. That's impossible, she said sharply. You're just a judge. But he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I was appointed long before I became one. And then he turned to me. And for the first time I saw something like sadness in his expression. Your father suspected this might happen, he said quietly. He just didn't know when. My throat went dry. Because suddenly everything I had lived through in the last 6 months didn't feel random anymore. It felt prepared. The missing documents. The delays. The quiet way certain doors had stayed open for me without explanation. Someone had been watching all of it. The judge leaned forward slightly. This court is no longer determining guilt, he said. It is executing a pre-established safeguard. My mother's face had gone pale now. Not angry. Not defensive. Just exposed. For the first time. And I realized something I hadn't expected. She wasn't afraid of losing the case. She was afraid of losing control of the story. Because without control, there was nothing left of her version of reality. The judge delivered the final ruling within minutes. The estate was transferred. The documents were sealed. The forensic evidence validated. And the case dismissed in my favor. But none of that felt like victory. Not immediately. Because as I stood there, watching my mother sit back down like someone whose entire life had just been quietly dismantled, I realized something else. She had never thought she would lose. Not because she was right, but because she never imagined anyone above her story. And as I walked out of that courtroom, past the jury, past the reporters, past the weight of everything that had almost erased me, I finally understood the look the judge had given me on the first day. It wasn't recognition of who I was. It was recognition of what I had survived without knowing I was protected. And for the first time since my father died, I didn't feel like I was walking out of a trial. I felt like I was walking out of a trap that had already been diffused long before I stepped inside it.